Welcome to Read, Think, Act, a video series coming to you from Lighthouse Books in Edinburgh. I'm Annie Rutherford, and I am so thrilled to be here today with Joelle Taylor talking about her latest book. I realised I should have asked cantos or cantos?
C+nto and Othered Poems. Hello.
Okay, there we are, part of the introduction, which has just been shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize. So congratulations, Joelle. Joelle is an amazing poet, a playwright, an author, and also a very generous supporter of her fellow poets and young writers. She founded Ambassadors back in 2001 and is now the host and co-curator of the Music and Poetry Night Outspoken. So, Joelle, welcome. It's really lovely to have you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, could we start with hearing a poem from the book?
Yeah, sure. So can I give a bit of an introduction
Please
so you can place it? So the book begins when a series of vitrines, which are kind of museum display cabinets, appear around London outside all our old cruising grounds, all the abandoned gay clubs, the gay bars, the squats, and the cottages. And inside each of them are moments preserved from wider LGBT plus history, but also from my own life. So the book is a mix between memoir and imagination, if you like. And inside one of these vitrines, like a snow globe, is a bar, an old dyke bar called the Maryville. And much of the action in the book takes place in there. And there are four butches who kind of command this space. And I'm going to read a poem from one of them. This butch is kind of a leather butch called Valentine. All of the characters in the book, and it's a poetry book, not a novel or anything, but it tells a story. All of them are real people that have now passed on. And there's a little bit of, obviously, poetic license going on too. So this is called Valentine. Born right body, wrong day. Valentine flicks her lighter in the corner of the club, and white women flutter. Tonight, she has dressed as the inside of a mouth, a hand-sewn suit excised from a cured night sky black. Leather has its own skincare routine. It listens to its mother. I've heard it said, some girls give birth to themselves on the back of motorbikes, invent the wind, let the road uncurl from between their legs, the infinite motorway, something British and unbidden. I know why we're drawn to the corners. It's where the road cannot reach us. Every part of a woman is a weapon if you know how to hold her, Valentine says. The corner flicks a morse, and in the dark, white hearts beat like moths against a headlight. Thank you.
That's so powerful. Thank you so much. I always find it really hard to have to ask people questions after they've performed poems really strikingly. But you've sort of already placed there is a narrative running through the book, and it's kind of sits between page and stage there. I love what you've done with the really surreal lighting and sound cues, but that are, like, I think a theatre.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to invent a kind of new form, which is, those of us who've worked in theatre or film know that all of our scripts have things like FX1, which means sound, LX1, obviously lighting. And I wanted to kind of invent a form where we are looking at something. And I wanted to use that because we're always being looked at. So this is a book about butch women, and it's a book about constantly being narrated by other people, yet erased from our own lives. So our story is the story of absence. But when I wrote it in these kind of like staged, and they're even called like scene 1, scene 2, and it's probably the hardest part of the book to get across to people that they're not stage directions, they're poems as stage directions. Like my publisher was like, what is going on? Is this act 3?
I really enjoyed it, and I loved the surrealness of something saying it's a sound direction, but being completely impossible to to produce a sound in some ways. You've talked a bit about in that poem really had coming through the sort of sense of alienation from our own bodies, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I say at some point in the book that my gender is exile, meaning like the whole experience, I think. And I obviously, Butch is not a monolith. I can't talk for everybody. I can only talk for myself and the women that I knew at that time, set in the late 80s to mid 90s. But we were all exiled from home, you know, coming out. The active word was out. It wasn't a positive feeling. You were exiled from your family. So the first exiling is kind of societal. And we were very aware. It was on television. Our fathers were laughing at us. It was a very, very visceral feeling. We were spat at in the streets. I was punched a couple of times. So that exile is very real in a way that it's becoming more real now, which is why I wrote the book, where we can talk about that. But yes, this sense of exile for one's own body. And the question is always like there's a line in it which is questioning, well, am I a man because I don't want to be a woman? You know, and I think it says, like, how can the fire also be the exit? How can the thing that I am has done most damage to me and I'm perhaps most afraid of, how can that be the thing that saves me? And so you end up in this liminal space, which I think is what trans is talking about when we talk about trans issues. We're talking about liminal space as much as we're talking, you know, about sexual politics. It's this sense of not quite fitting your own body. And is that because people are so prescriptive, which is what I grew up believing as a feminist, was that, you know, it's very important that I'm a woman looking like this, with your dad's face, a woman who looks like her grandfather. Well, I call it my mother in my father's suit. So there's something very female about me, but also something very masculine. And I think because I come from the genderfuck generation, if you like, which is a precursor, I think we're interested in disrupting all those ideas, but really we're looking for our bodies.
I think it's really beautifully presented in the book, of sort of the sense of a woman being here and her body being behind her, or sort of all of those images are so beautiful, in an unsettling way. But and I also actually really loved the final lines of the book, which I just wanted to read briefly, which are thank you for listening. Lay a wreath where the two roads pleat, photocopy my photograph, return to me once a year, tell them a story, make me live.
Oh, thank you.
Which I think is, very much summed up the book for me. And I just wanted to ask you, why do you think the act of remembrance is so important for the LGBT community?
I mean, I think it ties in with the sense of a generational rift, you know, that has been happening, and what the internet has brought us is a wider LGBT community, much more identities, not sexualities, but identities. So we have that clash happening, and you know, I think if we become aware of our whole struggle, and I'm not interested in the Stonewall bloody riots. I mean, it's fascinating. That's not what I'm talking about in the book. I'm talking about, you know, Kaz getting dressed up one night to go out down the bar, and then what happened to us that night, what happened to the small people. This is our history. Rebel Dykes, I'm not sure if you're aware of the Rebel Dykes. So I advise anybody watching this to Google Rebel Dykes, and there were a bunch of women who actually I became part of when I moved to London in the early 90s, and this is the part of history we need to learn about, how women and various people, it's mainly women-led, dyke-led, had these squats and all lived together and had this economy of, you know, sisterhood. At that time we thought of it as, you know, but we're absolutely invested as well in the sex industry, experimenting with what pornography meant and what it could mean to us as women, experiment with our bodies. You know, this is the kind of history so that we have a sense of who we all are. So that's it really. I just want us all to be preserving personal history. Your first kiss should be in a museum somewhere. You know, if your first kiss is banned or is considered disgusting in some way, I want the elder and the younger generation to start having more sincere conversations and more good faith conversations, you know, about how we can come together in the face of things like Chechnya. It's 5 hours and 26 minutes from my front door. You know, and if you want to read about, well, actually watch Welcome to Chechnya, the film, but don't watch it alone. It's absolutely terrifying, and it's real. So anyway, so I know I've gabbled on. Sorry, Annie.
No, that was fantastic. There's so much that I want to pick up on there. Okay, I think I'll throw in a question which I hadn't planned, which is, so you talked there about the importance of remembering, and our first kisses should be in museums. How do we do that? How would you say, okay, how do we both remember the people who've gone before us and chronicle our own lives?
I think Rebel Dykes is a really great example. So what happened was, I mean, I'm paraphrasing because I don't actually know, but a producer, I think Siobhan Fahy, a couple of directors got together, decided they wanted to tell the story of how they were and how they lived and how revolutionary it was. And so they collated all kinds of interviews and, photographs from the day. That led to the Rebel Dykes exhibition, which was photographs from the day, which was organised by a younger generation. So that's when I went to the exhibition, I read there, and so the Rebel Dykes were saying, "Nah, man, it was the youngers. The youngers have made this happen because they're fascinated." So the first thing is we come together and we decide a space. Now in the old days, we just took the damn space, and I'm thinking, why not? You could ask, maybe you could apply for an Arts Council grant, but I advise us to start taking space back, particularly in England. We've lost a huge amount, 254 gay clubs and bars, and all the dyke bars, apart from one, have gone in the last decade. And that's hypercapitalism, and the influence of market forces from God knows what. I don't know, I'm just talking. But we get space. And we invite people in. And maybe we invite people in we don't agree with. Oh, my God. Maybe we all are in the same space. Because believe me, when we went to these places like the Maryville, we weren't all like going, oh, my God, you're amazing. Like that. But problems were sorted out quite quickly. Because there's something about physical being in a space. And there's something about a common oppressor and the understanding of that. And you understand it because everyone's telling individual stories around the room. So I think collectivity in that sense is really vital and important, and that we understand as a community that debates aren't about who's right, it's about finding the right solution. So we're not winners and losers in this this conversation. Sorry, letting my roots show there, Annie. But yeah, that's what I think. It's form groups, come together. Invite people you don't like into a space with you. You don't need to thrash it out and have it out. Believe me, I'm butch. So we don't really confront things. We just have a drink at the bar, and then the world happens around us.
Reading the book reminded me of it was something I think Harry Josephine Giles said recently, which I am gonna horribly misquote, but it was something like, too many people think that it's more important to correctly define the terms of oppression than to get food and shelter and safety to the people who need it.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Harry Jo is an amazing thinker on these subjects.
Absolutely.
I'm an absolute leader. I'm very excited to read her new novel, novel as well.
I may have splurged on poetry books at the weekend.
Yeah, Deep Wheel Arcadia. Yeah. I'm going to get that too. But yes, that's exactly right. Hey, I'm hungry. There's a man following me. There's someone trying to get in. These are really basic things. And I think because we had a commonality, because it was just LGB. And in the dyke bars that I was in, it was literally lesbians, and, there was a whole bunch of us. You'd have thought of as the leather dykes, or now the rebel dykes, or the punky dykes, or whatever. And we were the ones that inhabited these essentially working class spaces. And because we had the commonality of exile, I don't think I ever met anyone who said to me, oh, my parents love it. Yay, I'm bringing my girlfriend home. It was really not. It was, some people, in fact, I wasn't out really. I mean, I came out at 12, but you didn't remind them about it. And you certainly didn't bring girlfriends home or anything like that, and I think that was having that common betrayal.
Yeah.
It rips your heart out. We can talk about it in very abstract terms, but to be unloved is a real thing, and it's something so quintessentially you, just who you are. Suddenly, yesterday fine, today unloved. And that's, I think, the experience of lesbian, gays, particularly from that generation.
I wanted to finish with a question. You've already mentioned Chechnya, and you've got a poem about the plight of the queer community in Chechnya in the book. And you, in your introduction, it's quite international, and I really loved that there's, so much hitting the headlines at the moment with Hungary with its sort of Section 28-esque law and the LGBT-free zones in Poland. And just how can we reach out? How do we show solidarity with family abroad?
I mean, I think family abroad is a really great phrase to use for this. It's the sense that we are really connected. We know how small the world is. My God, we fly around. Well, we used to before the world ended, but that will come back. The world is incredibly small. Watching Welcome to Chechnya for me introduced me to this organisation that are in Russia called the Rainbow Railroad. So it's picking up on the phrase railroad, which was used, during the civil rights movement, a way of transporting slaves into freedom without anybody knowing. So now they're trying to smuggle out gay men. The lesbians are not being able to get out because it's a Muslim country and because they're women that they can't pretend to be going on a business trip anywhere. They've got to have a male with them. So it's an absolute genocide of lesbians we're seeing over there. What we do is we raise awareness about it. We talk about it. We post things up. I mean, it's. And then I heard you talking earlier, actually, Annie, about a project you've got with translating Hungarian LGBT poets. Talk about that, because that's exactly the kind of thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, so this is, it's very early stages because life, but we're just bringing together actually Scottish poets, including Harry Josephine, and I particularly did try to get a range of ages of including generation who were affected by Section 28, because I think that experience is really formative. And Hungarian LGBT poets, and we're pairing them up, and they're each collaboratively translating a poem, or actually we have one prose writer, a poem or a short piece of prose by each other, and hoping to showcase it through Lighthouse, and also working with modern poetry and translation. And it is just partly a way of building bridges, and partly a way of, I partly suggested it because I translate a Hungarian poet, and I just wanted to let her know she wasn't alone, and she was so upset, and it was just a thing of going, look, somebody cares.
Yeah.
Sometimes in that moment, it is literally trying to give food to someone where you think, okay, I know you've not eaten today, and it's not solving the problem, but it's kind of reaching out in that moment.
And I think when you're in such deep trauma in these spaces, like just being able to reach out on social media is a massive, massive, massive thing. And it also helps us to kind of, it goes back to our needing our spaces back. We need to get our house in order for this to be a country we can recommend LGBT plus people come to seek asylum, because I know we're not feeling like we're certainly not a cohesive, safe space. There are safe spaces, don't get me wrong, we're not all, but like, I think we need to get our house in order, and it's a crisis world over. And why is it happening? Is it all to do with the rise in authoritarianism and right-wing belief? Is it because we've introduced this new idea of gender ideology? Is it because why is it happening now? And why do people feel so confident? I'm particularly concerned about the number of gay men murdered over the last couple of months in the UK this year. Is it 5 or 6? That's insane.
Terrifying amount, absolutely.
Insane, because we've had years without this.
Yeah.
But somehow we need to, as a community, stand and keep each other safe, and and to stand against it in a safe way.
Yeah.
Sorry, now I've terrified everybody.
No, not at all. I'm aware that I should wrap things up, but I think that actually wrapping it up on the note of we do need to come together and we need to keep each other safe is a really important message to end on. So, Joelle, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and it is always wonderful to talk to you.
You
and
too. Thank you
so much for watching.